Welcome back. That was pretty phenomenal, if I do say so myself. I just, want to say thank you again to everybody who has been chasing Todd all over, trying to offer them their cards. I assume you're all volunteering to serve our country, and so I thank you for that. We are off schedule, but we are going to push through. And so if people who are coming in, if you could come in, now is the time. Yes, please enter. And then we're going to close the doors in the back, so you don't want to be trapped in here. If you're leaving, leave. If you're coming in, come. We are going to do it. It's been a day of really being honored by the people I get to share the stage with, but this is taking it to a whole new level. I have been really, the first time I got an email to come meet with Scott Cook, the founder of Intuit, it was like being called into the principal's office. I was like, uh-oh, that's like, the mayor of Silicon Valley wants to talk to me. And I didn't know what to make of it. I wasn't sure what, if I'd done something wrong, if I was in trouble, but since that time when Scott asked me to present to the employees of Intuit, start talking about Lean Startup, that was the beginning of a collaboration that has really meant a lot to me and documented a little bit in the book. And Scott has been one of the pioneers in thinking about how can we apply this speed of iteration, this kind of experimentation, these Lean Startup ideas in one of the world's largest companies. So rather than go on and on about Intuit, I'm going to let him talk a little bit about it. So he and I are going to have a chat. We will try to leave some time to take questions, and just if you guys could close the doors in the back, we would appreciate it. Just if you join me in welcoming Scott Cook. Thank you. How you doing?
Good. So this is our fireside chat without the fire?
Yeah, or the side or the chat, but we're going to do our best. I think, I think pretty much everyone here knows Intuit today as, the behemoth that it is, but I felt like since we have a room full of entrepreneurs, a good place to start is maybe to talk a little bit about the founding of Intuit and what it looked like before it seemed like an obviously good idea. I think I read somewhere that you pitched every single VC on Sand Hill Road, plus or minus, and they all told you people would never want to do finance on their computer.
Yep.
So what was that like?
Yeah, well, the idea started with my wife complaining about doing the bills. And everyone has to pay bills, so it struck me this would be a great problem to solve with a computer. And the thought was, well, shoot, So I found my co-founder at Stanford, who was still a student, and we built most of the product and then went out for venture capital, figuring this will be easy. Here's a big problem. Lots of people have it. And we've already built most of the solution. You can use it. Well, it wasn't to be. We talked to over 25 venture firms, and they all turned us down. They didn't believe that people would buy computers in their homes. And even if they did, they didn't believe they'd do their finances. Using a checkbook on your computer was a widely discussed, stupid use of a computer. And even if by some magic people did do that, the VCs didn't believe they'd buy it from us. And we also didn't look like a dream team. This was back when VCs tended to fund people with long experience. And none of us had any experience in a software company. And I had come from Procter & Gamble, so I was in charge of Crisco. It didn't seem like the training for this. So we struck out, and we got some money from two angels. We were looking for $2 million in total. We got $151,000. And that kept the doors open for a while. But we really struggled. We eventually ran out of money. I borrowed some money from my dad, and we ran through that. And I used all my credit cards, they had credit limits, and we ran through that. And it was pretty grim. We had to return the rented computers. We had to return the furniture. We brought in, we used as desks and computer stands crates of unsold product. We had a lot of unsold product, so we had a lot of this temporary furniture. My wife, who's a planner, I'm not a planner. My wife is a planner, and so our marriage kind of got rocky because there wasn't a plan that you could see that would work. So that was the kind of brilliant startup that we had. We stopped paying salaries, and our little team of 7 people shrunk to 4 who worked for no money and equity, and it looked pretty bleak.
So how did you turn it around?
Ultimately, well, we had 2 near-death experiences. The first time, I managed to convince banks to sell our software. So I'd go to banks and say, hey, this is a lot better and cheaper than online banking, and you can be doing it next month. And so I got 10 banks to do it. And that kept the doors open for a while. But then I discovered that the banks were unsuccessful selling software. Banks don't know how to sell product. One of the banks locked the product up in the vault. And left it there. It's funny how consumers don't shop the vault. So that failed. And after I saw the banks were unsuccessful, I couldn't go sell more banks. That'd be kind of unethical. So then we hit another near death. Eventually, it was word of mouth. Some of the banks had started selling it. They sold a small volume of units. We got a little tiny amount of press. That got a few more people to order from us directly. Word of mouth started traveling. There were a whole bunch of competitors who were already in distribution at the stores, so if people walked in and said finance software, they'd get sold those competitors, not us. But people started demanding ours. Then we took some of the money we saved from the banks and started doing advertising, and that plus the PR started, and we were a little tiny, started tripling every year, tripling in size, triple again, triple again. Then Quicken became a big hit. Then we discovered by accident businesses were using it. And then we developed a product for businesses called QuickBooks. And today, Quicken's under 100 million. QuickBooks and its related businesses are $1.5 billion in revenue. So we're the largest supplier of accounting software. And that all came from a surprise. Then we got into doing payroll. Found a little entrepreneur, one-person entrepreneur who'd built a payroll solution hacking into our stuff. So we bought his little one-person company and then launched the product. And today, we're the largest vendor of payroll services in the country with 1 million firms who run their employee payrolls on our system. And now we're into employer benefits, so that they can pay health benefits, 401k. We do websites for business to take credit cards. We acquired TurboTax as a $40 million business, and it's today $1.5 billion. And now we get to do fun things like turning your phone into doing your taxes. So one team who was told it was impossible from the experts figured out a way to snap pictures of your W-2, have the software enter all that information, you answer 9 more questions, and if you're a 1040 EZ filer, you're done with your taxes. One of my favorite reviews on the Apple App Store was a guy who said, "I just used SnapTax in bed with my girlfriend." Oh, it was February 14th. "Just finished my taxes in bed with my girlfriend with SnapTax. She's so excited she might even wear the Valentine's gift I just gave her." So that's the kind of fun stuff we get to do.
Making tax preparation sexy.
Yeah, making tax preparation sexy. If you can do that.
That's pretty impressive. Now, I want to talk about SnapTax and a contemporary thing, but we had so many questions today and yesterday about people who are afraid that their minimum viable product is going to have some problems. And I heard this story, and I want to know if it's true. I heard that the first version of QuickBooks, I think it was, had like a fatal bug in it that turned out it would delete people's data. There was some kind of crisis in the early QuickBooks.
Yeah, that is correct.
That's like the worst thing anyone can imagine happening to them. I thought maybe we could talk about that.
QuickBooks had the worst of two. First of all, we didn't practice lean startup then, and it took years to develop. Okay, so big mistake, number one. Number two, we launched it, and it did exceedingly well at launch.
Hello, can we? Oh.
Hello, okay, all right. And about 4 weeks after the launch of QuickBooks, we started getting phone calls from unhappy customers. After spending weeks entering all their business data into QuickBooks, one day, poof, it would disappear. Now, it's amazing how huffy people get when weeks of work and all your information goes poof. So they called, and they were mad. And so instantly our tech support lines, and we worked really hard to give great service, our tech support lines filled up because we'd never staffed to have everyone call. And that was the brilliant launch of QuickBooks. So quickly the engineers got on it. They found the problem. We shipped everybody new disks.
People remember that in the past you had to send people a patch on a disk in the mail, right?
Yeah.
Some of these people have never seen a disk.
This was 1992, so we had to ship disks to everybody. But the disks only prevented the problem from reoccurring. If the problem were already in the database, it could reoccur on its own. So then we had to go through hour-long phone calls with every person to walk them through a series of patch methods. We doubled the size of our tech support department in a week, which was easy because we only had to train them on one question: where the bleep is my data? But this was a brand new product, brand new brand name, and you get the reputation for being buggy and losing your data, it could be curtains. But because we solved a problem no one else had ever solved, customers were so rooting for us that we got right through that, And our market share never dipped through that period.
What I love about that story is I feel like most entrepreneurs would just assume that's the end of the company. And yet, by having an opportunity to demonstrate that level of commitment to your customers, I mean, I work with web service companies now that could send a patch anytime they want, and to imagine them actually being on the phone with every single affected customer and making sure that every person got it fixed, I mean, that's, to a lot of us, inconceivable, and yet I think people take the wrong lesson from the MVP, that that it's supposed to be perfect rather than it's an opportunity to really engage with customers deeply. So I really admire that story. Thank you. I always wanted to know if it was really true.
And QuickBooks flourished through this time period, even though we cut the advertising, because why advertise a product that was disappointing people? And today, QuickBooks has a share of retail sales of accounting software of 92, 94%.
And only doing $1.5 billion.
Yeah, and online, QuickBooks Online is 60, 65% of the online business.
Yet another overnight success that took 15 years that we've been talking about all day. So I want to talk about kind of your journey of realization that you needed to think about how now not just to be an entrepreneur yourself, but to be a company of 8,000 entrepreneurs, and kind of how did that realization come about? How did you start to think in those ways, in those terms?
Well, I saw really two things. One, our success track record with new products was way below what we wanted. Too many of them flopped. Too many good people, smart people who've done great businesses produced too many flops. And what a waste of your most valuable people's time and energy. And in a successful company, you can keep flogging these failures for a long time. Oh, we're going to try this, we're going to try this. The other is we were starting to, large companies, successful companies have this problem that success tends to grind out the innovation from the people in the company. And we were starting to get that. In pockets here and there, some parts of the company were quite innovative. And the model that didn't work is the model I've seen elsewhere where a company would claim it's entrepreneurial because its founder or CEO acted entrepreneurial, but no one else in the company felt entrepreneurial. They were doing what they were told. And that happens to so many successful startups where there's one entrepreneur, the founder. I knew I was trying to build a company that would outlive any of us, would grow and flourish and keep developing new cycles of innovation to solve the biggest problems in people's lives. And that's when I discovered experimentation. The way to liberate innovation in a company of any size, particularly in a company of success, is to enable individuals and teams to run fast, quick experiments. And change the role of bosses. My big thing is change the role of leaders from the Caesars that have the answer and tell people and approve whether a project should be done or not, and eliminate that from the boss's role. And instead have the boss's role be the guy who champions a grand challenge, a grand vision, and then builds in a system for the people in the organization to run quick experiments to figure out the best way to get to that grand vision. Totally different role for leaders, for managers. And I'd seen snippets of that working in some other companies. We started trying, and then I discovered you. And immediately had you come into the company to teach us, because you've done a better job explaining how to run that system more completely than anyone else on the planet.
Well, that's very kind. I want to, so most of the people who are in an established organization, and I think this is true whether you have 10 employees or 10,000, know at some level that making organizational change, cultural change is really difficult because the culture gets in the way. And so I want to talk about that, but I also want to kind of give people a sense of what that endpoint has looked like for you. And since you already mentioned the SnapTax product, I told that story in my book, so I love that story. It's also a really fun product to use. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how it came to be. What was the process behind the scenes? Did you hire an outside innovator, who had great DNA and bring him into the company? Did you buy a team? How did you make it happen?
Yeah, so the TurboTax business is we're the largest preparer of income tax in the country, well, in the world. 25 million people will do their taxes on TurboTax. It's about $1.5 billion in revenue.
Wow.
Very large organization, very conservative because they've got to do your taxes right. And everything has to be up with huge ability to ramp up to millions of taxpayers all at once in January. And if we slip by a month, we're dead. So it's a very conservative organization in theory. But what we've done, and the leadership has built in a very experimental mindset. So on the TurboTax website, they'll run 150 experiments during the 3 months of tax season. So there was a couple of folks, TurboTax employees, essentially lifers in the TurboTax business, And had a big challenge. They want to enable people to get to instant taxes, to have your tax data already in TurboTax. So when you go there, you don't have to type anything. And so they've been working to get the information out of payroll companies and out of banks and brokerage firms, which we now have information from hundreds and thousands of companies that can go into TurboTax automatically. But they knew there was this long tail that would take us a decade or more to get. And they said, gee, is there another way? Could we use fax? Could we use scanners that are in most people's printers? And they ran a test of that, and most people can't operate the scanner that's in their printer. And then they thought about, what about the camera here? And they consulted the experts, and now this is 3 years ago. And at the time, the resolution of the cameras were low, and the experts said the lighting, the bad forms of tax documents, the cheesy cameras, it won't work. They said, well, let's try anyway. So they went out to 30 companies who do OCR work and put a challenge out saying, well, here's 5 documents, see if you can scan these. And ultimately, 2 of the 30 responded, and then they went with stuff that looked like it might work. And then the team went into a every 2-week iteration cycle of iterating every 2 weeks and got it to work so that, as I described, you can snap a picture, we'll OCR it, fill in the information for you, pull out your social security number, your address, name, all the W-2 stuff, so you don't have to type that in. They then did a test bed of not trying to do an entire 1040, but let's just do the 1040 EZ, and let's just do it in California. And do Fed and state in California for 1040 EZ. So we took one small segment of the population so they could rapidly get something up. And by God, that worked. And then they expanded to all states. And today it gets 5 stars in the Apple and Android stores. The best customer reviews I have ever read about anything, on anything we've ever done. One guy, and people are reporting they're done with their taxes in like 10 minutes. One guy said, I just finished my taxes in the bathtub. And all because this team would not say no, would not take no from the experts as an answer. And they kept iterating until they could figure out how to make it work. And it's the same team running. It's now been 3.5 years. The same team runs it. A little bigger now, but the same team of 1 engineer, 1 product manager, 1 designer. And then they've added more engineers. This is something eminently learnable. This is not something you have to have special DNA for. This is what people live for. You know, some people ask us, do you pay or do you have special innovation bonuses or that? Yeah, we do a little of that, but that's not what motivates the innovators in a company. They want to see their idea get real. They want to see their idea touch people's lives. And if the company can turn into an accelerator, accelerating that stuff into people's hands, that's what innovators live for. That's the reward they most want. Unfortunately, that's the barrier most companies put in people's way.
When I interviewed the SnapTax team for the book, I remember asking them a question, and they said something that really struck with me. I said, how come you were able to be successful at SnapTax when all the literature would say this kind of project could never get off the ground? The experts said it was impossible, so managers would probably kill it. It competes with one of the mainline products in the business. It's the classic innovator's dilemma. And they said, well, we had created for us an island of freedom. That's the phrase they use, an island of freedom in which we were free to run experiments and to iterate without interference. And I was like, oh, great, this would be perfect for the book. Where did the island of freedom come from? How was that made? And they said, hadn't thought about that. Like, I don't know. It just happened. Senior management had just somehow arranged this. And so I've been dying to ask this question. Where does it come from? If I want to create that for innovators in my company, how do I create that island of freedom?
Well, that's the role of leaders. That's, in my view of leadership in the agile world, that's the leader's role. That's their job, is to champion that grand challenge. In this case, eliminate all work to do a tax return. Now, that might take us 5 years, 10 years to figure out. And we might need the whole organization, but champion that vision and then create the islands of freedom for people to experiment with their best ideas on how to get there.
So that's a pretty different view of leadership than the traditional manager, what you described as the kind of playing Caesar. Can you talk a little bit about what that cultural change has looked like? Have all the leaders been really excited to give up their crown, so to speak?
It varies. Some leaders caught into this a lot more than others. But Brad, our CEO, and I keep working. We keep asking the leaders, okay, what's the vision? How are you freeing your people to run experiments? What experiments are they running? Are we trying things way out of the box? Not the usual suspects. Particularly, how many experiments are being run by your most junior people? The question I ask CEOs is, how soon after a new hire joins your company from college can they run real experiments on real customers?
So how soon after an employee joins Intuit out of college can they run real experiments with real customers?
Well, we're not as perfect as I'd like to be on that. We have some highlights and some lowlights. One example of that is we had two guys who joined us, I think 4 years ago, 3 years ago, one of the two, from college. In their 4th month, the two of them both commiserated with each other. They looked at the system that we used in the company to process ideas, to kind of harvest ideas from our employees. And they looked at it and said, this sucks. And then they said, these two new hires, they thought they could build a better system. So they talked it up a bit, and they finally found the ear of one manager who said, okay, well, we'll give you a little time to work on it, and then a little more time, and they built a system that they called Brainstorm. It's kind of like Facebook meets Amazon reviews meets, it's a place where any employee can enter any idea they've got in about 3 minutes. And then it's available to everyone in the company. Everyone else can add to that idea, can debate, can rate, can review the idea. And some ideas get more passion and others don't. And then teams can self-organize. The person behind the idea can say, hey, I need a UX designer to spend a few hours helping me design some screens, or I need a Java programmer to work over the weekend. And the teams can then self-organize. No managers involved. This is all the people throughout the company. So ideas, it's really a passion marketplace. It's a place for passions to come out and people to then spend their time on their passions and then get helped by others in the company. We didn't launch this or anything. It just took off within the company. Within the first year, over a dozen ideas that started in Brainstorm were into live-to-site products. We've now had 30, 40 different things that started there are now live as features or as products. And the funniest thing is we built it for ourselves, and then a whole bunch of companies found out about it and demanded we sell it to them, which we have done for a while. We've now decided selling enterprise software is not our thing. We've never been an enterprise software company. And it's still run by the same two guys who started on this in their 4th month with Intuit. So that's an example of us on the better side of things. We've got counterexamples that we're working to expunge. But
You want to talk about those?
Gosh.
Do you mind? We're a community, we talk about failure a lot. And actually, I don't want to put you on the spot to say something you're not comfortable with, but it's important for us when we talk about these ideas to talk about what's working and where the challenges are so that people can learn from that experience.
Too many times, too many of our newest employees have great ideas that we're not yet acting on. We don't have the systems in place to make it easy to experiment. And we still have lots of bosses who have their pet ideas that they think will work. And what has impressed me is how bad the batting averages from bosses are. Just how, it shouldn't be a surprise because you think of venture capitalists, the most successful venture capitalists in the world, the best firms, what's their success rate? Maybe 1 in 10. And you got maybe 2 or 3 more that are kind of bunts, and you've got 6 to 7 flops. Okay, these are the best VCs in the world who specialize, who do nothing but try to pick and help entrepreneurs. And so it's no surprise that bosses inside companies have failure rates that are at least in the same realm as venture capitalists. Except, unfortunately, bosses aren't realistic. The VCs know that's their failure rate. The bosses think that they probably got most of them right.
Yeah.
And so my goal is to get the bosses out, to subject the bosses to the same discipline that your idea has to be tested alongside your people's ideas.
I think it's a really powerful idea, and one of the things that I've learned from you that has really influenced my thinking is that it's really the responsibility of the most senior leadership in the company, not just to champion these ideas, but to build those platforms for experimentation, that you can't expect line employees to build all the infrastructure they need to run tests themselves. You need to give them the tools necessary to get that data and bring it back to their boss to say what works.
Experiments on tap that they can just do easily.
I like that. I'm going to use experiments on tap.
And then also to move to the minimum viable concept. So you're not expecting people to test some giant polished thing that would take too long, that people can test cheap, fast. So one of our examples, our head of our global division, we have an operation in India with about 500 people in it, asked our Indian operation 4 years ago, invent the new businesses for India. Find the businesses that will change Indians' financial lives and improve their lives so profoundly people can't go back. He had some notions. He got those in a test, but he opened it up so other people could come up with ideas of our Indian teams. And we coached them on how to do rapid experiments, how to do customer-driven invention. One team got excited about farmers, because farmers are 65% of the households in India.
You mean farmers?
Farmers,
on
dirt
farms.
poor farmers, on farms, little plots of land, subsistence level farmers. Now, Intuit had never done anything with farmers in our life. But they went out to farms. They spent time in farms, talking to farmers, following the farmers around in the fields to market, buying things in their homes, and they thought they found a problem, an unsolved problem that we could solve. Namely, the farmers ultimately have to sell their goods, and they have a choice of which wholesaler to go to. They can travel north to the village to the north and sell it to the Mundi agent there, or they go south to another village and sell their goods to a Mundi agent, a middleman in the south, or they could go east. But the poor farmer doesn't know where he's going to get the best price. And once with the middleman, he's not sure he's getting the best price. So the idea was, why don't we collect the pricing from all of those local Mundi agents in the villages, and then send it to the farmer SMS on their inexpensive phone that's already in their pocket, and tell them during harvest where the prices are at all the Mundi agents that they can reach. Not the price in Mumbai or Delhi, that's useless. The price right in their neighborhood. Well, the bosses didn't like this idea. They didn't think it would work for a lot of very good reasons. There were some leap of faith assumptions, which we've learned from you to call them, that looked like real stretches. Like, would the Mundi agents even give us the data if they knew it was going to shift demand away from them? So the team, however, knew they could test. So 7 weeks after they came up with the idea, they were in test with 120 farmers and 14 Mundi agents, and sending, they did a FACO back end, Wizard of Oz, where hand collected the data and then hand texted it out. And by God, it worked. Our metric, our hypothesis was that we would get 10% increase in price, is what the farmers would perceive they're getting. Well, they actually perceived they were getting 15% increase in price, which translates for a farmer to about 20% increase in take-home pay, the amount of money you have for your family. It's like an instant anti-poverty program. Instant, and it costs the government nothing. Who here would like to get 20% more pay? Raise your hand if you'd like 20. Yeah, me too. And
good value proposition.
Yeah, good, and for free, and for free. And instantly, you just read stuff on your phone. So that's what the team did, and the bosses twice tried to kill it, even after it had shown the 15%. They just didn't like this idea. But the test results just kept coming in. So now, 3 years later, the two ideas the bosses liked the most finally got to test too late after too much money was spent, and they didn't work. This idea has kept growing and growing. We now have it in 2 states in India. We just entered the 3rd. It's got 650,000 farmers who now report they get 16% higher prices on average, so 20% plus higher take-home pay. And we're going pedal to metal to spread this, and it spreads by word of mouth. The farmers tell other farmers. So that's the kind of breakthroughs you get when you focus on the Holy Grail. Something so big people will not be able to live without it. And then you free in these islands of safety teams to run experiments.
That's so cool. I know we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to see if there are questions from the audience. Does anyone have a question? I think we have a microphone somewhere. Yes, got a question here. You can just stand up and yell it. I'll repeat it.
Tell us more about the following people home after they bought the product, that initiative.
The question was just, can we talk more about following people home after they buy the product?
We found out a long time ago that if you rely on surveys and stuff like that, you're missing what's really happening to real people. You got to get there and see them with your own eyes. It's this missing step that so many teams miss. They rely on research or phone calls or public surveys or mother-in-law surveys. Go and watch with your own eyes. It's the thing you write about that Toyota does, is go and watch with your own eyes. Don't rely on a report or someone else. The plant manager in a Toyota plant will go to the part of the line where there's a problem and stand and watch with his own eyes. So it's a cultural thing we do to go watch the customer. And you'll discover things they would have never mentioned. You'll see insights you could have never, they wouldn't have thought to describe that surprise you and could be the basis for a new business. Here's an example. When we work with small businesses, employers, the biggest problems they have are not payroll, which is what we do. Their biggest problem with employing people are benefits, particularly health benefits. Health care is so expensive, health care insurance, and getting more expensive, that the percentage of small businesses offering health insurance has gone from 80% to 60%, to 40%. The projections are after the new health law, it'll get down to 20%. It's going the wrong way. Yet, the employers want to give health insurance. These people are often like family members, they believe, and the employees want it. It's just the cost and unpredictability of health insurance is driving it the wrong way. So we try to solve this problem. This is a big unsolved problem. So we worked and worked with a healthcare provider, did a special low-cost, high-efficiency plan, and we launched it in a quick test in California. The team expected to get for that test 100 people to sign up, 100 businesses to pay. We got 4. Thank God we're doing lean startup. So the team said, we got to pivot. First question is, well, did we misunderstand the problem? Maybe the problem was not as severe. They went back, double-checked with small business people. No, the problem had gotten even worse. It was even a bigger problem. So the problem was still real. There was something wrong with the solution. But then they noticed in these visits to businesses who couldn't offer health insurance, they noticed something they hadn't seen or even thought of. When an employee got sick or had a family health problem, the employer would, under the table, slip some money to the employee, skipping taxes to try to help the employee out. So the team saw that weird behavior a couple times. And that was a surprise. And they said, wait a minute, why don't we build a system to do that? Because the employers would like to give money to help their employees without taxes. Because if you just try to have the employee pay for it out of their income, then the taxes have been taken out. Health insurance can be paid for with pre-tax dollars. Could we get pre-tax dollars to go directly to employees to cover health expenses? Turns out the law permits that. They permit doing something called a health reimbursement account, not a health savings, a health reimbursement account. They have always been sold bundled with insurance, but the law allows them to be sold, skip taxes, pre-tax dollars direct to the employees. So we, for the first time, said, let's split that, unbundle, take the insurance off, because the high price of health coverage is the insurance part. Let's sell health coverage without insurance. Now, lots of reasons you'd expect that might not work. And so the team tried an experiment, and then another experiment, and today we sell the Intuit Health Debit Card. The employer can figure out how much money they want the employee to get, typically about $200 a month. The money goes on a debit card that's only useful for health. It's tax-free, so you get the full dollars going to the employee. $2,400 on average is what the employee gets. It's the employer's choice. And now the employee gets first dollar coverage, no deductible. It helps the employee from the very first penny they spend on health, and they can use it however they want. Some of the employees go and buy health insurance with it. So it's a new way of providing health coverage that we hope can open up some modicum. Now, it's not health insurance, but the businesses have shown they can't afford that. This is something they can afford that will never surprise them. It's simple. It's easy for the employee to understand. And that innovation all came off of Follow Me Homes, where we saw a behavior we hadn't suspected and then savored that surprise. And the team then invented this whole new paradigm shift.
That's so cool. Just so you know that we really believe that here, if anybody is wearing a T-shirt or a button that says some variation of "get out of the building," would you stand up? Anybody? Okay, all right. That's not a good enough ratio. This is
Not
South
yet.
by Southwest. So please talk to one of the people who just stood up to find out what you should be doing. We are actually way over time, and we're going to have to call this to a close, even though I know we have a ton more questions. I hope you'll be able to stick around for a few minutes, maybe ask you some questions. And I just want to say, Scott, your leadership has really been an inspiration both to me and to a lot of us. And so thank you very much.
We learn from you every day.